Hello, and welcome to week 6 of high school mythology. So, this week we will cover the stories of Achilles and Odysseus. So, there's a lot to go over this week. So, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our slides and get started. So there are a lot of references that you'll notice that we still use today that allude to the events of the Trojan War. So Helen is considered the face that launched 1,000 ships. So you may have heard that reference used before. You may have also heard people say, I feel they're using this gift as a Trojan horse, meaning, of course, that there's some kind of not so good underlying motive that someone may have in giving you something. And books are her Achilles heel. That is just one example of how someone might use this term Achilles heel, meaning someone's weakness. And I chose books because for me personally, books are my Achilles heel. My weakness comes in the form of books, right? I'm trying to save money and not buy as many books, but then a new one comes out that I just feel like I absolutely must have, right? So that is my Achilles heel. That is my weakness. So you may be able to notice as we go through this some other common references that we still hear being used today. So for this story, it's told in our text from a few different sources. So Edith Hamilton has taken some of this from Homer and the Iliad, from Aeschylus to write in Iphigenia's story. Euripides, this is where she has taken or used this source to get the judgment of Paris from Euripides' Trojan Woman. And then Apollodorus is where she takes this tale of Onione. All right. So we get this whole thing started, right? Because there is a very important wedding that's taking place. And Discord, also known as Eris, does not get invited to this big wedding feast. Now, if we look at her name too, discord, meaning, of course, that if you sow discord among people, that means you are an instigator, right? You're causing problems. So her name indicates her nature. So, of course, you wouldn't want to invite discord into something, where you're celebrating a wedding. So she does not get invited. And so what does she do? She sows discord among the goddesses. She throws into the banquet, right, this golden apple that says for the fairest. Now, it's always apples, right? We've mentioned this before. It seems like a recurring theme, not only in Greek mythology, but if we look at Norse mythology, even if we look at a lot of fairy tales, right, we see apples being symbolic of temptation sometimes, and something that people really want. So, of course, this apple, not only is it one of the golden apples, but it also has for the fairest. So it's going to be given to the most beautiful. So Discord tries to get Zeus to choose the most beautiful from Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena. And very wisely, Zeus refuses to make that choice. So instead, Discord goes to Paris, who is a prince. He's the son of King Priam of Troy. However, King Priam has been warned that Paris is going to cause trouble and bring negative consequences to Troy. So Paris is put away, in the fields, and that is where Discord finds him. And she tells him to choose the most beautiful among Athena, Aphrodite, and Hera. And rather than even really looking at them and judging them on their beauty, instead, Paris is going to judge them based on whichever one bribes him with what he really wants. So Hera promises him rule over kingdoms. Athena promises him victory in war. And Aphrodite promises him the most beautiful woman in the world. And Paris chooses, as Paris would, based on the kind of person he is. He doesn't want the responsibility that comes with ruling a kingdom. He doesn't want to go really into battle to be victorious. He wants the most beautiful woman in the world. So the problem there is this most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, is already married to one of the kings in Greece, King Menelaus. So there's this idea here of this butterfly effect, which is something that's seen in chaos theory. That's basically, a butterfly flaps its wings and there's a hurricane or a tsunami on the other side of the world. But how it relates to this story is this one decision, right? This one decision that Paris makes to choose the most beautiful woman in the world as his gift, that is what is the catalyst for the Trojan War. Now we'll go ahead to this next page and talk about, we've done a little bit of this already. We have kind of talked about Menelaus, but we'll go a little bit more into his story now of how he gets married to Helen. So Helen is, as we've mentioned, the most beautiful woman in the world. So there are many that want to marry her. So her father comes up with a plan to bring all of the suitors, and he makes them swear an oath that whoever he chooses to marry Helen, that they will swear an oath to protect and guard that person. And he does this in order to be able to keep down any kind of, problems or fighting that could occur among the suitors. So they swear the oath, which binds them, and Menelaus is the one that is chosen to marry Helen. So his brother Agamemnon is also a king, and Agamemnon is going to play very importantly into the Trojan War. So whenever Paris goes on a visit to the home of King Menelaus and Helen, they're having a wonderful time, and Menelaus has no reason not to trust Paris. So while Paris is visiting, Menelaus goes away to Crete. When he gets back, he finds that Helen has left and gone to Troy with Paris. Now, there are some variations of the myth that say Paris kidnapped Helen and took her against her will. There are other variations that say Helen chose to go with Paris. At any rate, the important part is she has gone from Greece to Troy. So Menelaus goes and tries to get her back. He's refused. And Agamemnon, his brother, says we must go to war. And that's exactly what they do. Now, there are two warriors who are reluctant to go. Achilles is reluctant to go because he has been given a prophecy by his mother, Thetis, the sea nymph, that if he does go and fight in this war, it is going to bring about his death. Odysseus is another hero who does not want to go. He wants to stay at home with his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. So Odysseus comes up with a plan. As we'll see, Odysseus is strategic. He is cunning and wily. So he decides that he's going to pretend like he is not in his right mind. And he does this, but of course, Agamemnon and his servers are suspicious about this. So one goes to see Odysseus, and Odysseus acts like, again, like I've said, like he is out of his mind and he's just plowing the field. And so this man puts Telemachus in front of the plow, Telemachus being Odysseus's son. And Odysseus, of course, stops and refuses to run over, obviously, his son. And that reveals then that he is not out of his mind. So he does end up having to go and fight for Greece in the Trojan War. As they're going, they reach a point where the winds will not allow them to go further. So the Greeks are wanting to reach Troy, but the wind is not working in their favor. And they find out this is because Artemis is angry with them because some of Agamemnon's men have killed a sacred hare and the young of the hare. That hare was sacred to Artemis. Took a minute for me to click back. Artemis. And so Artemis demands a sacrifice of something that is precious to Agamemnon. And Agamemnon chooses to sacrifice his daughter. And this is something that we don't really see a lot of. It's mentioned kind of contrastingly, right, in a lot of places that the Greek gods frowned on human sacrifice. But at the same time, here we have the story of Artemis, who is demanding a sacrifice of Iphigenia. And so King Agamemnon, in order to be able to keep going to Troy, he chooses to sacrifice Iphigenia, his daughter. He gets her to the place where they are by tricking her into thinking that she's going to be marrying Achilles. When she gets there, however, she ends up being sacrificed. And this is also going to put into motion what happens to Agamemnon once he gets back home after the war, and what his wife Clytemnestra does to him and vengeance for his sacrificing their daughter. So after this, they're able to continue on their journey. Then we have another drama that unfolds. The men are getting sick and they're continuing just to get sicker, and it's spreading more and more among the Greeks. And it is revealed that this is happening because Agamemnon has taken as a war prize Chryseis, who is the daughter of one of the priests of Apollo. And he has asked for his daughter back, and Agamemnon has refused. Therefore, he has brought down punishment on himself and his men. So in order for the illness to stop, he has to give Chryseis back to her father. But he's angry about this. So he says, if I have to give Chryseis back, then I'm going to take somebody else's war prize. So he takes one of Achilles and he takes Briseis. This angers Achilles, angers him, humiliates him in front of everyone because Agamemnon has taken what he feels belongs to him. Of course, all of this is very terrible because they are claiming ownership of women, but we will see this frequently, of course, in these myths. So at any rate, Achilles is so angry that he refuses to fight in the war, which is very unfortunate for the Greeks because he is their strongest warrior. So his mother, Thetis, makes a request of Zeus, asking that Zeus will make sure that the Trojans are continuously having victory in the battles, as a way to show the Greeks just how bad they messed up by angering Achilles. So other gods and goddesses take sides too. The battle is raging on. As we said, not only are the Greeks and the Trojans fighting, but you have gods that are getting involved and goddesses on each side. As the battle continues, it stops for long enough for Paris himself, right, the one who is now with Helen, and Menelaus to have a one-on-one battle, which is really what it should have been anyway. So as Menelaus is about to be able to kill Paris, Aphrodite sweeps in and takes Paris to safety. So then we have Menelaus going and demanding again that Helen be given back to him. He's refused. We get other examples of divine interference in the battles. Achilles is still not fighting because he's angry. Ares gets in the middle of a battle and he's wounded. And he goes up to Olympus and asks for help from Zeus, but Zeus really doesn't care and doesn't pay attention to him because, as we mentioned at the beginning of class, no one likes Ares, and not even his father, Zeus. We have Aphrodite, who's involved in the battle, and she gets injured. And while this is happening too, something that I do want to point out is Hector saying goodbye to his wife and son. So Hector is the brother of Paris, which of course makes him a prince and the son of King Priam of Troy. And Hector is the bravest and strongest warrior for the Trojans. So we have this kind of emotional scene where he's saying goodbye to his wife and his son as he's preparing to go back into battle. Finally, Zeus gets involved, and then we have Agamemnon sending Odysseus and others to Achilles to beg Achilles to come back and fight in the war, but he still refuses to do so. Hera wants to make sure that Zeus is not being involved with the battle, so she gets herself all dressed up and dolled up to take his attention away. And so while their attentions are on each other, the Greeks are, battling it out. Patroclus, who is the best friend of Achilles, in support for Achilles, has also not been fighting in the battle. However, when he hears about how much the Greeks are struggling, he says to Achilles, I can no longer stay out of this battle. I must go and fight. And Achilles gives Patroclus his armor, which will, of course, make the Trojans think that Achilles is in the battle, and they will be very fearful, right? So as Patroclus dons Achilles' armor, he battles with Hector. In this battle, Hector kills Patroclus. When Achilles finds out about this, he is filled with rage. And so he no longer has his armor because once Hector has killed Patroclus, he's taken the armor of Achilles. So Achilles' mother, Thetis, gets Hephaestus, right, the blacksmith of the gods, to make new armor for Achilles. And she tells Achilles, if you go into this battle, you will die, but your name will be remembered forever. But if you don't go in the battle, you will not die, but your name will be forgotten. And so as we can see, clearly Achilles chose to go into battle to have his name remembered, to avenge the death of Patroclus, although he knew that meant death for him. And so indeed, whenever Achilles and Hector battle, Achilles does kill Hector, and he refuses to give Hector's body back to King Priam, back to his father. So instead, he drags the body of Hector around the walls of Troy. Eventually, though, King Priam makes a plea of Achilles, and Achilles relents and does indeed give back the body of Hector. And at this point, Hector has a funeral, And that is the end of the Iliad. So it is carried on further in what happens to Achilles and the others. This is mostly taken from Virgil's Aeneid, which is the story of Aeneas, which we'll be focusing on in depth next week. So Aeneas is the only survivor of the Trojan War from the Trojan side. And the fate of the Trojan women that we see in Edith Hamilton's text from this week, this is taken from a play by Euripides. And we do see, of course, that the Trojan women are taken to be war prizes of the Greek warriors. And tragically, the son of Hector, along with these other young baby boys, they are thrown off the walls of Troy to their death. Achilles' last battle, he is killed by Paris. And it is not a face-to-face battle, which you would not expect anyway, right, of Paris, because of the nature of Paris to be cowardly. Instead, Paris's arrow pierces Achilles' heel, the only vulnerable part of Achilles. And the reason his heels are vulnerable is because his mother dipped him in the river Styx when he was born to make him invulnerable. However, she didn't think about the fact that she was holding him by his heels. Therefore, those parts of him did not get submerged in the river. So that's what leaves it open. And additionally, too, Paris doesn't even, shoot his arrow directly into Achilles' weak spot on his heel without help. Apollo himself guides Paris's arrow to the right spot, and Achilles dies. After Achilles dies, his armor is going to be given to either Odysseus or Ajax. So the others vote on this, and Odysseus is chosen, and Ajax decides that he's going to take vengeance on everyone. However, he's visited with madness. So he thinks instead of, killing a whole bunch of rams, which is what he actually does, he thinks that he's fighting and killing the warriors, including Odysseus. But then when he comes to, right, when his madness is lifted and Ajax sees that he has slaughtered a bunch of the Greeks' rams, he is dishonored and he decides to take his own life. Then Paris is mortally wounded and he begs to go back to Onione, who is the woman he was living with and, supposedly in love with before he went and, took Helen off. So Onione refuses to heal Paris because she's still angry about what he did. So he dies. Then she's grieved because he's dead and she didn't choose to save him. So she ends up dying also. Then the Greeks steal the image of Pallas Athena. They're still trying to get within the walls of Troy so they can completely finish off this war. And Odysseus, again revealing his cunning nature, comes up with an idea. He says, let's, construct this huge horse and we'll present it as a gift and we'll secretly hide inside so that when the Trojans open the gates of the wall, we can actually jump out of this horse, right, and slaughter everyone. And this is exactly what takes place. So after this happens, you have Aeneas, this sole survivor. And as I mentioned, we will get to his story next week when we talk about the Aeneid. However, this week, we're going to move on and talk about Odysseus. So Odysseus after the war still has to spend another 10 years wandering before he gets to make it back home. Therefore, he's been gone for 10 years of a battle, and then he's going to be gone for 10 more years trying to get back home to his wife, Penelope, and to his son, Telemachus. So this story is taken mostly from Homer's Odyssey, and the agreement that's mentioned between Athena and Poseidon is from Euripides' Trojan Women again. So as Odysseus is setting off on this journey to get back home, while he's gone, there have been multiple suitors who want to marry his wife, Penelope, and they have just taken over her house. They're rude, they're disrespectful. She's been able to hold off marrying any of them because she says that she must finish her sewing. So what she does is sew every day, but then at night she undoes everything that she's done, and that way she is able to continue on doing this work that she has to do before she can get married. So she is trying to stall marrying anyone, still in the hopes that Odysseus is going to be coming back home. So Odysseus and his crew, first of all, they encounter the lotus eaters, and when they are on that island, some of his men eat lotus, which causes them to be content where they are. They don't want to go anywhere. They just want to stay there forever. So that's the first problem that they encounter. Once that's taken care of, they come upon a place where they come into this cave with wine and food, and they're just enjoying themselves. However, that cave belongs to one of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, who's also a son of Poseidon. So when Polyphemus gets home and he sees what's taken place, he is infuriated, and he snatches up some of Odysseus's men and eats them. So now they're stuck in this cave, right? So they come up with a plan, and they pretty much, it's Odysseus, comes up with a plan of how they can escape from this cave. So while Polyphemus is out, they take a long stick, right? And they sharpen one end of it to a point so that when Polyphemus comes back, they can stick it into his one eye, right? Because he's a Cyclops and he only has one, and they can blind him and then escape. And so, in addition to that, Odysseus says, in order for us to escape, we've got to go out whenever Polyphemus is letting out his rams. But we can't get on their backs because even though he can't see, he'll be able to feel us up there. So he decides that the men will have to get on the underbelly, right, and hold on up under those rams so that when the rams pass through and Polyphemus is like touching the top to make sure no men are escaping, they're still able to escape because he's not going to feel them as they're under the bottom there. So they get away from this ordeal. And then they're given a bag of winds that they are told not to open up. And of course, they open up that bag. That stalls them once again. Then they make it to the island of Circe. Circe turns a bunch of the men into pigs. One of them escapes and is able to go back and tell Odysseus what has happened. So Odysseus is then given this kind of magic to make sure that Circe can't turn him into a pig. And when she sees that he's not going to be, she's not going to be able to turn him into a pig, then Circe falls in love with Odysseus. So they end up spending a year there. Eventually, she tells them, how to be able to go further. They need to go see Tiresias down in the underworld. They must give him a blood offering, and he will give a prophecy to them. So they do this, and Tiresias tells Odysseus that he will make it back home, but they need to make sure that when they encounter the sun, that they do not harm his oxen. So once again, the crew messes up again. They're so hungry when they get to the oxen of the sun, they slaughter them and eat them. So every one of them dies except for Odysseus. So he finally makes it back to Ithaca, which is his home, and he disguises himself and he plans to stay disguised as a beggar so that no one will know who he is. And a sad note, however, when he gets to his home, his dog recognizes him, but Odysseus does not acknowledge his dog because that would give his secret away. And the poor old dog dies. It's very sad. And then a nurse that has been in the home for years and years and years, she recognizes a scar on Odysseus's foot and knows that this is not a beggar. This is actually Odysseus, but he makes her promise to keep it a secret too. So the suitors are still there, being rude and disrespectful and trying to get Penelope to marry them. So she says that she will marry the one who can wield with skill the arrow and bow that belong to Odysseus. So, of course, none of these suitors can do it. And the beggar wants to try. And they all laugh at him because they don't obviously know, right, that this is Odysseus. And when he gets up to take his chance, he kills all of the suitors. And in doing so, he's able to be reunited with his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus, after 20 years. So, like I said, there was a lot that we covered this week. I look forward to seeing your answers on the classroom page. Also, be sure to look for the poem that will be linked on the classroom page so that you can answer the questions about it. And I look forward to, again, seeing you share your thoughts on the classroom page. Bye.